Hello, everybody. It's March 25th, 2020. I'm Jim Haizlett. I'm speaking to you from an undisclosed location, practicing social distancing. Actually, I'm back in the back area of our farm, and I have to come about a half mile away to avoid the noises of the house. So, you may hear some cows mooing or some geese cackling or my stomach gurgling. It's hard to tell what will be what, but you might hear a couple extra sounds. We'll see how it works. All right, well, several months ago, Pastor Steve asked if I would want to give a little talk sometime to the church, and I said yeah, and then we decided on this date a little while back, and it just so happens that it coincided with a pretty major event that we're all familiar with. And it's kind of an odd feeling right now. I mean, we just had the shelter-in-place order, and it feels a little bit funny, like there's a angel of death coming this way, and we're all kind of hunkered down. And I don't know, it's an odd feeling, but I think that it's going to provide opportunities. I have students right now. I'm in my final semester at West Liberty, and I've been fielding a lot of emails from them saying, what are we going to do with our projects? They're all seniors and they want to graduate. And I just have to tell them it's time to be flexible, be creative, work with what you've got. I mean, a lot of them are locked out of their labs and different places where they can do their work, but I think some interesting things are going to come of it. So for ourselves, we look at this as a setback, but there's opportunities that we can find. And I think one of them is just having a little extra time. If we allow ourselves to use that time, it's easy to want to just fill things up. But we do have some extra time maybe, and we can use that to, in some ways investigate some things that we might not have been doing, or there's disciplines of the faith that we can try. And one that I'd like to go over with you all is a discipline of meditation or contemplation. When Jesus first was baptized, he immediately went out to the wilderness for 40 days to pray. And I've been to that wilderness, and there's not much there. It's like dirt and mountains and some goats here and there. It's pretty sparse, pretty barren. And I can't imagine what you'd do for 40 days. All I can imagine is he must have done a lot of meditating. The Western Church, we're pretty chatty when it comes to prayer time. We think that that's a time for us to talk. We talk a lot, and we ask God for stuff, and we tell him that we need stuff. But there's another side to prayer that I think is that we miss often, and that's just silence, and trying to keep from filling up our the empty spaces with noise. And I think that that's something that's definitely in the Bible. Be still and know that I am God. I mean, that's about one of the shortest verses, but a very powerful one. Just be still. So, but there are some things that we can do to facilitate that. So we'll work on that. Some things that meditation brings us is we realize, in some sense, our own insignificance in the universe, and things like our ego and things that we want to do and things that we want to be kind of fall away, and we find that we can become grounded in just some of those fruits of the Spirit that we often miss, like patience and peace, self-control. Why am I talking about this stuff? I think because we don't know where this is headed right now. It could all be concluded very nicely here in the next few weeks, but it might go on. But there's going to be people around us that are going to need us. There's going to be just a place for people that have a sense of who they are and a sense of how they can be a peaceful influence in what could become chaotic. We hope it doesn't, but if it does, we're ready for it. But we first have to find that peace ourselves, and our natural tendency, of course, like everybody, is to think of ourselves first. And you see that when you look at the toilet paper wars at Walmart and things like that. I mean, you know, that's a natural inclination that people have. But through meditation, we can find that we are connected really to everybody and everything. And we can let some of those things roll off and not be as important to us. We can, and for myself, I know that I'm doing well if, I'm in traffic and somebody cuts me off or something. If I just say, let them go and wave them on, I know that I'm okay. If I want to get ahead of them and push them out, then I know I probably need to get myself lined up again. So let's talk about a meditative session. There are 200 billion stars or so, they think, in the Milky Way galaxy. That's just the Milky Way galaxy. And then within the universe, scientists think there may be as many as 2 trillion galaxies. So God's much bigger than we think. Those are big numbers. We can't even comprehend them. We live in a very earth-centric world. We think about ourselves a lot. We think we're pretty important, and we are to some degree, but there's much more to this universe than we really know. And so my understanding of God is more of a verb than a noun. When I think of whatever force might have created all that we know in the universe, it has to be intense energy, intense light, unimaginable power. But the Bible does give us some ideas. It talks about the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And a guy named Richard Rohr calls this the Trinity a divine dance. Talks about it being a flow of these individuals rather than separate beings. They have their own separate qualities, but they merge so much and they're in such close communication that we can call them one. And we can look at things that we know, like, for instance, atoms, parts of atoms. You've got a nucleus, you've got a proton, neutron, electron, swirling around each other, moving, energy connecting them. They're different parts, but they're still one. We look at our solar system. We've got our sun. We've got the planets revolving around. If you look from a distance, it looks like one thing. It's just a solar system acting as one thing, but really it's divided into a lot of different things. And I bring us there because Christ, the Son, was with the Father and the Spirit before the beginning of time. Colossians 1:15 through 17 says, "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Now in that passage, I believe it's Paul speaking in Colossians, he's talking about Jesus being this Son that was there before the creation of the world. So let's think about it for a minute. All things were created by Christ, and Christ holds all things together. So, all things, the planets rotating around their suns, solar systems rotating within galaxies, electrons rotating around protons. There's this energy, there's this force, there's something holding all of this together. And this passage is saying that it is Christ. In him all things hold together. Everything we can see and even things that we can't see. So if Christ is holding all of this together, wouldn't it be nice to get in touch with that power? Wouldn't it be nice to be aware of it and have it be part of who we are intellectually as well as what we do every day? And I think we can do that by quieting ourselves and just experiencing that flow of the universe. And it can be done. Again, Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. I believe that that's pretty profound, that we can just be still and we can know God. So, I've got a little challenge for you. Came upon something called a contemplative sit, which is just sitting, being comfortable for about 20 minutes or so, and allowing yourself to just be still. And the first thing we think about are all the different thoughts that come into our mind, and that's going to happen. And I've got some tips here in a second. But if you've tried this before and, I can't do that, I think about too much stuff, well, you're like everybody else. We're all like that. But there are some techniques we can use to train ourselves and to experience that discipline of silence that is pretty ancient and that has been kind of lost, I think, in terms of the Western Church in the last several hundred years. We're very active in the West. We like to get things done. We like to have a list and go do it. So we need some guidance to do that, and I've done some reading and finding things out, and so there are some tips that I've got for you. First of all, to do this, find a quiet place. Find a place with no distractions. Try to get comfortable so that you're not thinking about how hard your chair is. I mean, some people conceivably might do this on their knees, and that's okay. My knees hurt after a minute or two, and then that's all I can think about. So the other thing that hurts for me is trying to sit cross-legged. I've never been able to do that. It's awful. And so to try to do that would not work for me. So a comfortable chair, or sometimes I'll just walk through a field or in the woods and can do it there too. But often just close your eyes if possible. And begin by breathing deeply in and out. And just focus on air through your nose and in and out of your lungs. And by a deep breath, I mean a nice long deep breath. In and out. In and out. And just the simple act of doing that can calm you down. Doing that several times just to kind of get things on the road a little bit. Something that you can try is also just another name for God in the Old Testament was Yahweh. You can breathe in with a Yah and out with a Way. And you start to focus, and things outside start to slip away. And then the next thing to do, which is really helpful for me, I heard of this and I tried it, and it really does work, especially if you've got a mind that just is constantly firing, is to, with your eyes closed, picture yourself just sitting beside a stream or a river and watching the river just flow by. Nice, slow flow to the river. While you're breathing, while your eyes are closed, while you're comfortable. And pretty soon, along will come a thought. Thought is going to be something like this. I forgot to get milk. Got to go get milk. Or, got to get that appointment for the radiator to get fixed. Things like that. They just come up. They just pop into our mind. It's okay. Don't let that bother you. The thing to do, which really does work if you try it, is think of that stream, think of that river, and just make a little paper boat and put that thought right in the boat and let it just float down the river. And it really does work because you're acknowledging that the thought is there. If you try to like put it away and try not to think about it, it just seems to be more persistent. But if you put it in that little boat and just let it float away, that seems to work. It works for me. Try that. The next thing would be to visualize the concept of Christ holding all things together, in whatever way that might mean for you. In him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. So everything was created and is being held together. That's an active verb. That's held together right now through Christ. And there's powers that we don't know. There's powers of gravity and electricity, and there's other powers that I'm sure we're not aware of that would be spiritual powers holding everything together. And think about the solar system, the little miniature universes that are in your own body, the little atoms. Everything has that power of God, that creative power that's there. A tree growing. I mean, this is a beautiful time to walk out through the woods and see buds coming out. There's power there. What is that power? Well, that's the power of life. That is the power ultimately of Christ. And so, visualizing that, just kind of meditating on that, wherever you are. And you do this for a while, and you'll really find rest. You're going to really find peace and just a sense of place, a sense of being that you won't if you're just running around like we do. We run around and do things all day long, and we don't have that place of rest. But you really can find that place of rest. So I'd ask you to try this stuff. And then don't speak a word until the very end. Don't even think of words until the very end. Just let yourself be quiet, be still. But then at the end, you might end your session by just thanking God for what an amazing universe we live in. There is so much beauty in the world, and you look at some of these pictures from the Hubble telescope, and they're just outrageously beautiful, the universes that are, the galaxies that are out there. Can be thankful for your family, for the gifts and talents that you have. And maybe at the very end you just tag on, a prayer. God, help me to know what it is that I can do to be of service now, at this time. Is there something that I can do? And now you can go out from a place like this after finding that kind of rest and that kind of purpose, and you've got in your arsenal the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Those things are necessary when we start dealing with difficult situations. But we don't do this just to, sequester ourselves and to have this experience for our own benefit. But we do it so that we can be useful, that we can act. Leviticus 13 is kind of a weird chapter. A lot of Leviticus seems to be, but this one in particular really reads like a medical textbook. And it talks about all the different signs of leprosy, what to look for, how to know if it's coming on, how to know if it's still contagious, it's ending, all those sorts of things. So you read through it, and it really does read very descriptively of these sores and just how awful it is. And lepers were contagious. It's very contagious, and people didn't want to be around them. And so Leviticus 13:45-46 says, anyone with such a defiling disease must wear torn clothes, let their hair be unkempt. So their hair is just wild, their clothes are torn. Cover the lower part of their face and cry out, unclean, unclean, whenever somebody would come around them. As long as they have the disease, they remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside the camp. So you could be the mayor of the town, you could be the baker or anybody that's really important, but if you got leprosy, you were outside of the camp and you were alone and you were unclean and nobody wanted to be around you because you were an awful person. And you know, we don't know where this is all headed, this COVID-19 thing, but I have a feeling that if somebody gets it, nobody's really going to want to be around them too much because they could get it. And that's normal. And I think, our lockdown right now, they're trying to keep it from spreading too much. I understand all that. But let's look at how Jesus responded to leprosy a little bit. In Matthew 8, he came down from the mountainside and large crowds were following him. And a man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Now, imagine that scene. So this leper, and they're obviously a leper. People know what they look like, and they're probably freaking out. The crowds are like trying to get close to Jesus. This guy just like kneels right before him. And I'm sure people are just pushing each other back and yelling at the guy to get out of there. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. Kind of broke some rules from Leviticus. Like he broke a lot of rules. I am willing, he said, be clean. And immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, see that you don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So Jesus, like usual, broke the rules, and he risked his own life, and he touched the lepers to make him well. So he came to show us how to be humans and how to treat each other. Jesus came to earth, that Christ that holds everything together. Think about that now. Everything together. That amazing creative being came as a man and walked among us. Why? To show us how to be humans, how to treat each other. Pastor Steve's message on Sunday was, don't be afraid, think of creative ways to help your neighbor. We should do that. I think we should be smart. I think that we should comply with the distancing rules. I agree with them, try to keep it from spreading. But on the other hand, there's ways that you can creatively come up with to help. Things that you can do, that you have the ability to do, let's do them now. Let's reach out to people now. So I have a couple quotes at the very end here. Philippians 2:3-4. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. And then one last quote, which has been attributed to many people. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle. Especially now. We just don't know what people are going through now. They could be to their last dollar, and you may be the person in line that pays for their groceries or puts a bag of groceries on their porch. We don't know what's coming, but I believe we're going to do well. I think that it's an opportunity if we come to it from a place where we have that assurance of who we are in the universe and what our responsibilities are. And I believe that's it for now. Take care, and I hope to see you all soon.